Well, friends, 2024 is over, and we're in that season of reflection and looking forward. In the gaming space, 2024 was a year of AAA flops. Each year that goes by, it seems the big budget video game bubble gets even closer to popping. Concord, Skull and Bones, Suicide Squad, all huge losses. So, if you're a gamer who plays a lot of current year releases, this might have been a rough year for you. But I actually found this to be a good year for games, because I got to delve backwards and pick up some games I missed. Before we get started, let's do the rules. There's only one though. Be a game I played in 2024. Not even released, just played in 2024. Alright, with that out of the way, let's kick off with honorable mentions, because we've got a lot of ground to cover. My third honorable mention is Shadow of the Erdtree. Shadow of the Erdtree was one of the biggest gaming-related things to happen this year, and if you're consistent to my content, you'd probably know that I played it and I really enjoyed it. So why is it so low? Well, I didn't finish it. Actually, I haven't even played it since I recorded that video. Shadow of the Erdtree came out at a really inconvenient time for me since I was super busy. I basically had one chance to play it on release week, and then I waited to make the video before playing it again. And then once I finished that, I had kind of already forgotten about picking it back up. But I fully plan on going back to it as soon as I can, because the nudge to play it has kicked back in. My second honorable mention is A Highlands Song. A bit more of a niche game, and this is a similar case to Shadow of the Erdtree, in that I haven't finished it. Well, I guess I technically did, but I didn't complete the main objective, so I need to make another run through it again. I also played sparsely over multiple months, so I was scattered each time I picked it up. I don't feel like I gave it a proper chance, but that being said, A Highland Song is a very unique game, about the wonders of being Scottish. Just kidding, it's not really about that, but this game is a love letter to Scottish culture. This was one of my favorite games presentation-wise this year as well. Beautiful visuals and music. Man, I want to go to Scotland now, dang it. And my last honorable mention is Animal Well. Animal Well is an excellent game. It is top 5 worthy on this list without a doubt. So why is it in the honorable mentions? Well, when I sat down to write this section, I had a critical realization. I don't understand this game. I have yet to unlock its mysteries. I mean, I beat it, sure, but I can just tell that I missed it when I played it the first time. There's still more for me to uncover before I can properly cover this game. So to be clear, I fully recommend this game. It's a one-of-a-kind, and if you like Metroidvanias or puzzles or just want to try something new, give Animal Well a shot. Alright, and that's it for the honorable mentions. Let's get into the top 10. And we're starting off with... Okay, I know, putting a generic Ubisoft sports game on my Game of the Year list is a gamer sin in 2024, because Ubisoft is at an all-time low, but Riders Republic is my pure, surface-level, gamer fun game this year. Even though it has many of the modern gaming isms, it's nice to play a game that's just a game. Back when I was a kid, we had this game called MX Unleashed on the original Xbox. And while Riders Republic doesn't play like that game, I think my brain engages with this game the same way, so I have this fondness for the game that may or may not be based in reality. But even so, I do think this game is a great time. When I would come back from a long day, this game was great to throw on and goof off with. My favorite thing about this game is the sheer amount of players on the map at once. I just like to roll through the high traffic areas and see what happens. Cool shots, people doing tricks, failing jumps, flying past, hitting objects. This game just has a proper goofy energy, and I love it for that. And then there's the mass races, which are a whole nother deal. They're these giant chaotic races which can have up to 64 players in them, and it's just plain fun. You know what, words aren't really working here, editor. Just roll the funny clips and let's see what happens. Neva is a weird game for me to talk about, because it really only clicked for me once I beat it, meaning that a lot of the commentary and discussion topics I would have for this game would involve spoiling the whole thing, which I don't quite feel like doing because this game is great. The immediate standout is of course the visuals. Neva is a gorgeous game, definitely my favorite art style of 2024. Everything is so beautifully illustrated, especially when it comes to the season changes. You'll never have a lack of eye candy when playing this game. The soundtrack by 𝙁𝙗𝙗 is excellent as well. I enjoyed the use of bass here. I wasn't expecting it to be a prominent part of the soundtrack, but it works very well here, and it's got a good identity in the tracks it's used in. Since I don't have as much I feel like I can say, why don't we just roll some clips of this game to top this section off? Do you know what a Matryoshka doll is? Wait, hold on. Matryoshka. Do you know what a Matryoshka doll is? If you think you don't, it's one of these. Yeah, see, now you know. Cocoon is an excellent puzzle game that reminds me of a dimensionally transcendent Matryoshka doll. If you want to know what I mean by that, then you should play this game. No, I'm not going to explain that. Cocoon is my favorite puzzle game I think I've ever played. Cocoon manages to make all its puzzles logically challenging and also fun to actually solve. Progressing puzzles in Cocoon doesn't feel like running equations. I would liken it more to a science experiment. You've got all these live elements that you need to test and examine, then utilize together to realize your goal. It also makes sure to mix things up all the time by adding new ingredients and variables into your experiment, making sure your frontal lobe is always lighting up when playing. This game pulls off so much in such a short runtime. I played this thing for 6 hours to beat it, and if you're smarter than me, you'll be faster. But quality over quantity, and this is a high quality experience. What Cocoon does super well is how it ramps up its difficulty. The progression and introduction of more complex and in-depth puzzles to solve is excellent, and I never felt like the game hadn't prepared me for any of the problems it threw at me. But the thing I appreciate most about this game is summed up in one word: intuitive. There is not a single voice line or dialogue box in this game. When the game needs to communicate something to you, it does it within the game world, using visual and audio design to show and explain to you how the game works. And it's crazy because in the moment, I never realized it. The game sent me cues and I understood. It's such a compelling way to have the player engage with the game. Let's also talk about the audio element of that design I mentioned. Cocoon has the best sound design of any game I've played this year. Cocoon is, in the context of video games, a quiet game. There isn't music playing all that often. Most of the time it's a soft ambience of sorts, but that helps to draw attention to the local sounds that are created by the world around you. Cocoon is excellent at creating an alien and bizarre soundscape that is beautiful and puzzling in nature. If you play this game, really engage in listening to the experience. There's so many unique sounds that accompany your journey in this game that communicate so many things to you. I feel like my ears engaged in playing this game just as much as my hands did. It's truly a unique game, and if you seem interested in this at all, then you should play Do you ever need a break from life, or even just from thinking too much? Many times, people will recommend you go on a walk to clear your head and decompress. But not everyone has the luxury of having space to go on a calming walk in the cool of the evening. A short hike is the antidote to that problem. This is my therapy game of the year. It's the manifestation of kicking your legs back to relax and just enjoying the simple things. There's a lot you could say this game is about, but for me, this game is about taking a break and going back to the basics of what the good things in life are. Nature, beauty, music, kindness. That stuff. What's great about games like A Short Hike, though, is that they can mean whatever they need to for the individual. Though I do believe there is a clear takeaway in this game, and there is an endearing story to follow as well. This is a fun game to actually play, though. It's not just nice as an idea. There's just enough gameplay nuances to keep you entertained for the whole game. Trying to glide as fast as possible is classic. Like the title alludes to, this is a short game, probably around 5 hours for 100% completion. And less for just the main stuff, though I recommend doing everything you find, the whole game is better for it. But what helps the game to have an identity over that short runtime is the music. The soundtrack, composed by Mark Sparling, manages to hit all the right notes. It's bright, calming, with a touch of magic in there. All the while it manages to keep a good pace, because you are on a hike after all, so the music has to have some motion involved. Yeah, See You on the Top is the best track, fight me on that. The cherry on top, though, is the way the adaptive music works. You'll hear different layers of a song depending on what specific part of an area you're in. This actually really helps give each part of the hike its own character. The different paths feel distinct because of how the music changes. It would also be a crime not to mention the adorable visuals, too. I love the way it looks, it complements the mentality of the game so well. The writing and dialogue is also super charming in this game. It's hard to put a finger on, but you can just feel the lack of filtration through a studio. There were a lot of funny moments here, but not just because of jokes being told, but because of character interaction and the genuine unprocessedness feel, if that makes any sense. This game just exudes good vibes, and if you need to get away from life, then maybe you just need a short hike. When Sonic X Shadow Generations was announced, I knew that I would play it because of a childhood affinity for the Sonic franchise and a morbid fascination to see if this game would be a step forward or backward for the series. But I wasn't expecting it to be, well, good. And I definitely wasn't expecting it to be a fully functioning, polished product that I would actively recommend to other players. But I'm happy to report that I was wrong because this game is actually good. Not just by the standard of the franchise, I mean good. The base game of Sonic Generations was already one of the best games in the series, but now with Shadow Generations added on, you could make an argument for straight up best game in the series in general. I know there's recency bias, but I feel like the Shadow half of the game pretty much outclasses the Sonic half in every way except for the amount of content offered, as Sonic Generations has 3 more levels than Shadow Generations and like 1 more boss, and I forget more challenges, whatever. Otherwise, the Shadow content is higher quality, better looking, and really just a great time. There are so many improvements over Sonic Generations here, and even over Sonic Frontiers, which this game does borrow quite a bit from. The 3 big areas where Shadow Generations succeeds are in its excellent level design, massive improvements in animation, and finally, just a general level of polish across the board that we haven't seen from a Sonic game in a hot minute. Shadow Generations uses the gameplay style of the boost formula primarily, and I'm inclined to say that this is the best iteration of that formula we've seen to date. The boost formula prioritizes speed above all else, which is a reasonable approach for a Sonic title, but if it's done incorrectly, it can lead to incredibly stale gameplay. For example, Sonic Forces. But in this game, those problems feel worlds away because these levels have layers. Alternate routes and shortcuts are absolutely jam-packed into these stages, which encourages a lot of split-second decision-making when you play, eliminating that crucial pitfall of the boost formula. Mastering the stages is so much fun. Whether you're plotting out your route or retrying the stage for the 30th time for that perfect run, you're sure to have a blast. Speaking of blast, Shadow also has new abilities that really spice up and diversify gameplay. I'm not going to get into them too much because I don't have time, but most of them felt additive, not just one-trick ponies that are created from artificial demand. Now for animation. If this is your first time looking at a Sonic game, you probably won't think much of it here in Shadow Generations, and yeah, I'll be honest, we're not exactly pushing the bar in this game, but if you've been tracking the series like I have, then you'll know that what's present in this game is actually kind of a big deal. Seriously, the last time we had animation in a mainline Sonic title that was better than just fine was flipping Sonic Unleashed that released in 2008. Sonic Team must have hired more animators or something because the difference between this and Frontiers feels night and day. In terms of gameplay animation, there's a lot of new moves and such that all look great, but especially coming from Frontiers, you'll notice some of the smaller stuff, like Shadow's walk cycle now scales much better with slower speeds than before, and it progresses nicely into his run, without any egregious foot slide. Also, how Shadow leans into his turns more noticeably at slower speeds and looks in the direction he's turning. And he's got this really stylish quick step where he does a little spin when used. It's a great way of taking advantage of the air skates. Of course, there's still areas to improve. Shadow's boost animation leaves a little to be desired. It doesn't convey his speed all that well, and he doesn't lean or look into his turns like how I praised with the other animations. Which is unfortunate because you spend a lot of time boosting, but it's still perfectly fine and functional. I just don't think it's up to the standard this game set for itself. But the most noticeable improvements come in the cutscenes. Everyone is just so much more expressive and, dare I say, animated. Shadow the Hedgehog is now showing more visible emotion and thought than Sonic has been in the last 10 years. I wouldn't have it any other way though. That's not to say Shadow is no longer edgy or cool anymore, he's still got plenty of that, especially in the mid-level cinematics, which by the way are really awesome. Like, look at that, they didn't have to add this. I sincerely hope that this is the animation team working with Sonic going forward because I think we're in really good hands. Finally, this game is noticeably absent of that patented Sonic jank. Maybe it's just because this is a smaller project and they could afford to do a little more polished work, but this game just feels much more well cooked than usual. Like it didn't get shoved out the door before the devs were done working on it. I guess if I'm doing criticism, I'll just say that the game is short, but it's short and sweet. Not to mention, it's not even a full $60. It's not like it has no replay value either. I put 30 hours into the Shadow side of things and I still plan on going back for more. And you can't forget that this is a package deal. You get Sonic Generations 2, which I only have one thing to say on because it's the same game it's been for 10 years and it's still great. The only thing I'll say is that some of the rewritten dialogue was weird and this line kind of caught me off guard.
Totally strange.
Introducing Pizza Hut's new ultimate stuffed crust pizza with tons of toppings and cheese baked right into the crust. It's unlike anything you've ever seen.
We can start over there. That skyline looks familiar, but I can't be sure.
Okay, just kidding. Yeah, the rewrite is fine. It's nothing special, but it's better than the original. Anyways, I could talk about how I think this game is a top 3 Sonic story in my opinion, but I don't have time for that because I've already been here too long. Moral of the story, game good. If there was any game that took 2024 by storm, I think everyone would agree that game is Helldivers II. Nobody expected this game to pop off this hard. I remember seeing ads for it and thinking it looked fun, but didn't actually think it would blow up to the capacity it did. That being said, I actually didn't hop on the democracy train until the latter half of this year. But man, I gotta say, this game is excellent. Helldivers gives off the vibe of a game that released in the golden age of the PS3 and Xbox 360. There's so much awesome stuff, but you can tell that it was all for the purpose of the player having fun. This game stands basically as an example to the larger shooting game market. You don't have to be Fortnite or a battle royale or free to play to succeed. Sure, streamers might make you think that way, but I think Helldivers reminded people it's nice to not sweat your butt off all the time when playing a shooter. Okay, enough about the scenario around the game, let's actually talk about the game. Helldivers 2 is a co-op horde shooter, where you, a noble Helldiver, take on missions to defend the liberty of Super Earth from your evil assailants, the Terminids and the mutinous automatons. Warring these factions will lead you to all kinds of battles, so that's our first point. Mission variety. There's plenty of types of missions and objectives to take on, making sure things don't get monotonous. My favorite of these has got to be the ICBM mission because how could I pick anything else? You'll have plenty of tools at your disposal to help you complete these missions, mainly in the form of stratagems. All Helldivers have at least 4 stratagems at their disposal, and a stratagem can be anything from a shiny new gun, a bombing run, or something like a shield generator to keep the heat off. In a different game, stratagems would be rigid on-rails events that you can only summon whenever the game wants you to. But here, you can call down a massive bomb from orbit whenever you want, on whatever you want, provided that you aren't on cooldown. Helldivers 2 lets you have these amazing set-piece creating moments at your disposal pretty much at all times, and that ties into what I believe makes this game so good. The way I see it, the developers of this game, Arrowhead Studios, made a conscious decision, that being, instead of trying to get gamers to play the game their way, they would just lean into the gamer's natural inclinations when playing an action game. Instead of trying to force you to play your best and optimize every bullet you use and stratagem you call, the game encourages you to just play like you would when you were 10. Blow everything up, it all has to go, get rid of it. Do stupid emotes in the middle of battle. Shoot your teammates, it's funny. Mayhem is encouraged, team kill is on for a reason. You can land on your friends for a reason, because it's just fun. All that being said, you can still play this game tactically, which when you play as a team or and try to function well together, that also makes another great way of enjoying the game. Coordinating stratagem strikes before you storm a base is a great way to feel that team spirit. And the other decision Arrowhead made, that might be a little more subtle to some players, is to lean as hard as they can into embracing this game as a cinematic experience. When I say a cinematic game, you probably think of an over-the-shoulder narrative-based experience AAA title, like the newer God of War games, or Uncharted. Those games make you feel like you're playing in a movie, with every set piece carefully tailored and polished to create that ultimate sense of empowerment. But what makes Helldivers special is that its cinematic moments all happen organically, and they happen almost every single mission. I have 35 hours in Helldivers, and I'm still taking clips just because that moment looked and felt so cool. There's so much happening here that I just don't have time to dig into, but this game draws out the spectacle of all the chaos going on in a magnificent way. If you play this game, pay attention to all the small details and presentation this game has. Arrowhead has lovingly crafted one of the best shooters on the market, and it shows. Which begs the question, why wasn't Helldivers nominated for Game of the Year again?
Alright, I'm going to 50kg past you. I will do my best to past you. Oh my gosh, I passed one! Thomas, that doesn't make you. Oh, it's on my... I swore you saw it.
The Metroidvania genre is home to some of the greatest indie games of all time, meaning any new game that drops in that genre is up to some serious scrutiny. In my experience, Nine Souls held up to that scrutiny remarkably well. It should be noted that I actually haven't finished this game as of writing, but I'm pretty close, so keep that in mind. If Hollow Knight is the Dark Souls of platformers, then Nine Souls is the Sekiro of them. You play as a Fangshi warrior named Yi, on a quest for revenge on his colleagues who betrayed and killed him. I think what surprised me the most about Nine Souls is that its narrative is actually quite good. On one hand, it's similar to a game like Dark Souls in that it has a deep world with lore that you'll have to seek out yourself and connect all those dots. But it also has a very character-motivated main story that I didn't realize I was really missing from these heavy lore-based narratives. It feels like the best of both worlds. You still get the intricate world and history, but also with a narrative anchor that helps in keeping you from getting lost. Exposition and world building is really handled well here. Exposition through conversation doesn't often feel obtuse, like the character is talking directly to the player. And then all the heavier exposition is stuff you can find in exploration, and is completely optional information that helps you engage with the world if you want to. It's seasoning to bring out the flavor, not required reading. But even so, I would pin this game as a game you play for the playing rather than the story. So let's talk about the gameplay. In terms of movement and exploration, this game is pretty standard within the genre. Nothing on that front will knock your socks off. That isn't to say it's not enjoyable. I still think movement and exploration is great here, and I tried to get everything I could while playing. You've just probably seen it before. The real area of interest for this game is the combat. This is where Nine Souls really puts its stake in the ground. You've got the standard triple/slash combo when you start out, but you also have something called a talisman. Essentially, when you use this, you'll dash past the enemy and attach your talisman to them, which will detonate momentarily after attaching for high damage yield. You'll unlock different styles for this move, and attachments that change how it functions or its effects. But the best part about this move is that it's cool. When you kill a boss with it, it makes you feel powerful. Perfection. But the talisman can't be used freely. It has to be charged, and you charge it by parrying. On a base level, Nine Souls has one of my favorite video game parries in terms of visuals and feedback. Getting that precise parry just feels right. It's so good. The parry is also quite balanced. It's difficult, but not ridiculously hard to time, just enough to feel rewarding when you hit it. Not to mention that there are different parries too to keep things from getting stale and making sure you're always on your toes. The crucial part of every parry is risk and reward. If the risk is too small, combat is trivialized. If it's too great, parrying won't be worth it. Nine Souls gets that balance just right. Even then, the parry isn't all-encompassing. You'll still dodge a lot of moves just by moving around and dodging attacks the old-fashioned way, but as the norm is for a Souls-like. The place where the combat shines the most is the boss fights. Mastering the boss fights in Nine Souls has a very satisfying grind to it. First attempt, you're getting killed in like 10 seconds, but by the end you'll be parrying moves left and right in a high-octane rush, taking advantage of every opening you can get. So far, none of the bosses have been way too over the top either. It's a fairly consistent difficulty increase so far. Keep in mind, I haven't beaten the game yet. I've heard the final boss might change my sentiment on that, so we'll see. I did have a couple issues with Lady Ethereal's fight, but I also really just didn't like Lady Ethereal at all. There were parts of her character that felt, unnecessary. Moving on, what's really interesting is how these bosses are handled narratively. I don't want to get too spoilery because I think what Nine Souls does here is cool. But it seems that a larger theme that permeates through Nine Souls is corruption, and that idea seems to echo through its world and its characters. Nine Souls is a pretty game, though it didn't wow me the way something like Neva did, mainly due to the world itself and its design not having that magical element to use vague terms. It was still pretty, of course. I mean, it's hand-drawn. That alone means it's objectively good-looking. That's a joke. Sort of. What I loved most about Nine Souls' presentation, though, was its animation. Especially when looking at the parry, it's so snappy with real impact. I also thought the meditation animation when you learn a new ability looks really good. So pay attention to the animation of Nine Souls because the team very clearly worked very hard on it. Speaking of a developer team, let's look at the credits for this game. Wow, what a talented group of individuals to make this game. This was also their first outing for Metroidvanias. The only other game that appears to be on Red Candle Games' resume is a game called Detention, and it appears to be first-person horror. So, completely different. Great job, Red Candle Games. Alright, before we get started on the top 3, I just want to say that these next games are all Game of the Year quality games. And honestly, the thing that made me decide which one was Game of the Year is not related to video games. But we'll get into why I picked my Game of the Year whenever we reach number 1. Let's get back to the show. While Journey may not seem so profound in the gaming scene nowadays, this game is actually 12 years old. It released in 2012 on the PlayStation 3, and while I haven't done extensive research, from what I've heard and read, it made waves back then. Journey was one of the games that helped pave the road for video games as an art form. So knowing that this game had a lot of significance, I played Journey around April this year. I played it through and I thought it was good, but honestly, I didn't resonate with it. There were a couple reasons for that. Firstly, I played it across 2 or 3 play sessions, but the last one was removed from the others by a week or 2. That's fine for some games, but I think it detracts from the game here. I also think I was trying too hard to get it, if you know what I mean. I was more focused on analyzing than just enjoying the game, but the real answer was that I didn't meet anyone else on my journey. Eventually, I decided I wanted to come back and finally play it again. I had a feeling from the get-go that this was a game you played multiple times to get the most out of, but I don't know why it took me so long to return. This time though, I decided I wanted to get some of the achievements. It was a short game and there was only like 11 achievements, so I figured why not? We'll see if that makes my experience better. And it was during that achievement hunt that I learned to love Journey, particularly the achievement Companion. For this achievement, what you need to do is find a friend and complete most of a journey and beat the game with them. This is the intended experience of the game. It was here that I understood that Journey's real story isn't one of murals and visions, though that does exist. Journey's real story is the one you make with other people. My first friend was great because they took me to all the secret murals and collectibles, and so I was able to get all that stuff I needed for those achievements. After that, I got to be the guy who reveals hidden collectibles to a new player. A different play session, I met a guy who showed me how to do some advanced movement techniques, which, by the way, journey movement is actually really cool. I had no idea. But it was through all of this that I found Journey's purpose. It's about finding that random player and just going the whole way with them. There would be multiple times where I'd start the game to do one specific achievement, real quick, and then I would end up making a friend and traveling with them longer than I meant to even play for. I know nothing about any of these people I played with. I only even got the Steam names of people I completed the journey with, and that wasn't all of them. I still have no idea who my friend who taught me how to charge boost was. And therein lies the beauty of Journey. This little game made me care for people who I will most likely never know or see ever again. They may have been the same player model as everyone else in the game, but that person was my friend. It made me sad when a journey ended prematurely because I knew I'd probably never find that person again. How many other games have done that for me? None so far. And this whole game induces a little introspection. How many people do I meet that I will never see again? What if I thought of everyone I meet in my day-to-day life the same way that I think of random people I meet in Journey? That's the kind of introspection that doesn't just fade away after a moment. I'm gonna leave that question open-ended because that's a whole different video topic that you didn't come here to see and I don't have time to make. Journey is the only video game that has made me ask those questions, and Journey is beautiful because of that. I mean, it's also just literally beautiful. Journey has my favorite presentation of any game I played in 2024, and by presentation, I mean everything on the fronts of visuals and audio. The spectacle of Journey is incredible. From the very moment you climb that sand dune and you look up at the mountain towering over you, you understand the goal of the entire game. The mountain stands over you as a majestic reminder of your journey. It's also just a really beautiful set piece. Its presence adds so much to any shot it's in. The world in general is also just very pretty. Journey manages to make an endless desert sea gorgeous. Speaking of, this game has my favorite sand in any video game, which is kind of unfair because this is basically just sand the video game, but whatever. But something else that accompanies you for your travels is the soundtrack. Composed by Austin Wintory, Journey's soundtrack is nothing short of spectacular. It actually got nominated for a Grammy for Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media. I'm not kidding. Honestly, it's probably my most listened to album this year. If you don't plan on playing Journey, at least listen to the score because it's really good. This is normally the part where I say it's my favorite soundtrack of the year, but it's actually tied with another entry on this list, which we'll get to very soon. To cap things off, Journey is a very special game. One that I found brought beauty in visuals and audio, but it also managed to bring out the beauty of humanity. One day, while I was on a call with a friend of the channel, 𝐷𝐴𝐻𝐻, we were talking while he was playing a game. I asked him what it was about, and he gave me a short description, then decided it would be better just to show me. And all he showed me was this. And then I was sold. Treading lightly as to not give too much away, OneShot is the best take I've seen on the game interacts with the real world genre/idea. I thoroughly enjoyed how OneShot handled that dynamic. It uses that to tell what I think is a great story. OneShot has my favorite narrative of 2024, and I was more emotionally invested in this game than anything else I played this year. In this game, you'll direct a character named Nico, who woke up randomly in this dying world you're both in. Nico wants to go home, and it's your goal to get him there. But things don't stay that simple for long, because this world you're in is deprived of its sun, and the only people who can get it back are Nico and you. To go farther into detail is a disservice to anyone who hasn't played this game yet. I mean, what I just gave you was more of an I knew when I played, so you'll just have to be content with that simple plot synopsis. OneShot is a puzzle RPG, so there's no combat or platforming here. The types of puzzles you deal with here are more of solving problems in the world and getting past roadblocks than some of the brain-bending stuff that might go on in a different kind of puzzle game. You'll have to collect items and combine them, and explore the world inside and out in order to find your solutions. If puzzle games aren't your thing, I wouldn't worry too much because it still rings much more as a narrative-centric game rather than a puzzle-centric game. What OneShot does best, though, is getting you to care about the world and characters, which the plot really makes use of. Even the characters you meet who are just quick in and out appearances, you can get attached to in some way or other. All the characters are just trying to do life in a struggling world. Some are hopeful, some are hopeless, some are too busy to care. What also makes it so good is that OneShot has that special magic. That charm that comes from a lot of different places, but is more than the sum of its parts. Man, something about pixel art just hits in a different way sometimes. The music also does loads to help because OneShot has a great soundtrack. It's often simple, but still hitting every single tonal and emotional beat right on point. The track Distant hit me in a unique way. It's a simple song, but it hits inside of me with a certain kind of melancholy that I haven't felt from a song in a while. Maybe ever, honestly. It may not even hit the same way for you, who knows with these things. But I think the moment when that song plays for the first time is when I was fully emotionally invested in OneShot. OneShot engaged me in a way that I hadn't engaged with a video game before, and I've realized that one of my favorite things a video game can do for me is let me experience something new. And OneShot is a one of a kind. It falls into that category of game that you can only really play once. So I'm just stuck here remembering how good this game was. OneShot is really, really good. So good I bought it twice, by the way. So if you're intrigued, maybe you should play the game. See if it's your speed or not. But if you do, just remember, where do I even start? Death Stranding is, without a doubt, a great game. Death Stranding is, without a doubt, a flawed game. Death Stranding is, without a doubt, a Kojima game. This game just intrigues me. There's so much to unpack, and that's part of why it's my game of the year, because it has staying power. It was one of the first games I started this year, but yet I will still think about it and start breaking it down inside my brain, because this game is an anomaly. I want to make a full-length video essay on this game in 2025, because I feel a lot of things about this game. But I'll keep it short-ish for now. Where to start? I guess with the gameplay and a little synopsis. In Death Stranding, you play as Sam Porter Bridges, a porter who delivers packages for the government group Bridges. No, I'm not joking. I could go off about naming conventions in this game, but I can't. Death Stranding takes place in a post-apocalyptic America, after an event called the Death Stranding caused mass destruction across the globe. America is fractured and broken. People are severed from each other, disconnected. The government agency Bridges is a team dedicated to reconnecting Americans back to each other to restore the country. It's your job to travel across the nation, delivering packages to help get people back on their feet and get them connected to the chiral network, which I'm going to describe as the internet but on super crack. But that brings us to the actual gameplay. As I mentioned, your job is to deliver packages to all the cities and preppers in the nation. And this is where people say Death Stranding fails. Because Death Stranding is a walking sim, and that's a straight snooze fest, right? Game boring, game bad, you've heard it before. But honestly, in my own experience, I actually found the gameplay to be maybe my favorite thing about the game. I beat the game, and I still hop on to deliver packages just because I want to. There are parts of the walking simulator label that are true, but it really undersells the experience. Firstly, it completely ignores the strategy side of things. America isn't just straight plains, it's hazardous. From mountains to climb, valleys to descend, and rivers to cross, your real opponent in playing Death Stranding is the landscape, which is why you'll need to strategize and plan your routes before you hit the roads, especially in the early game. And you'll also encounter bad guys like mules who want to steal your packages while you're out and about, so that's another thing to watch out for. Speaking of bad guys, there's combat and stealth in this game. While it doesn't steal the show like in Metal Gear Solid, it's still very much a part of the gameplay loop. And there's another piece of the gameplay that I'm leaving out, because I think it's cooler to let the game introduce that piece of the puzzle to you without me telling you about it. Now, I think that the gameplay of Death Stranding can still definitely get stale. It happened a couple of times for me, but there were a couple of solutions to that. Either one, take a break and come back on a different day, or two, stop making things easy. Death Stranding can definitely be boring, but that's if you choose to make it so. Vehicles are kind of overpowered, so if you do all your deliveries with them, it will get stale for sure, but that's your choice. I found that I had the most fun with this game when I chose to push myself by taking on multiple large orders at a time to a bunch of different areas with no vehicles. I forced myself to engage with the game. By the time you get later into the game, you'll have better equipment and be better at the game yourself, to where on a normal delivery you can probably just go straight in with no plan or anything and be fine. But if you really pile up those packages, suddenly you have to use all your tools and really plan out your routes to make sure you're going to be able to make it in good time. When you've got 50 packages on your back and you're almost out of stamina with half the journey still to go, that's when Death Stranding shines. But there's another core mechanic that plays into Death Stranding's gameplay, the chiral network. The chiral network is a system that allows structures built by other players to appear in your world, and vice versa. It's a really neat system, one of my favorite parts of the game. The whole story of Death Stranding is about bringing people together, and this is honestly a fantastic way of having your story show through gameplay. Death Stranding is a lonely game, but the map will be littered with structures, signs, and evidence of other porters. Throughout Death Stranding, you'll find weathered areas and paths to walk on all across the land. I only learned recently that those paths aren't predetermined. They're made by all the traffic of you and the players that walk that route. That's honestly such a cool detail, and it's a great way of making players feel like they're connected and working together. This game is fascinating. I have to rein myself in here and move on, but I really like the community aspects of Death Stranding. Okay, let's open the can of worms that is the story of Death Stranding. It's hard to talk about this because I feel like with everything I say, I'm starting a 20-minute discussion, and I can't do that right now. But this is a Kojima story through and through, and it's also not. It's a Kojima conniption, that's what it is. It's somehow the most Kojima and the least Kojima story I've played. I mean, it's got the main trademarks. We got American politics, a ridiculously complicated story, sections where you are just watching a movie instead of playing the game. But it's all the strangeness of Kojima with not as much of the wackiness, which creates for a very strange player experience if you're coming off of something like Metal Gear Solid. But even in a vacuum, without comparing it to other Kojima games, it's still super interesting. The writing has its ups and downs.
This guy is so cool. It should be on Ride.
Why would you say that? I already told you this game is about connecting people and rebuilding America, but that's really only half the story, when it could have been the whole story. There's an entire other element of the story that gets all existential, abstract sci-fi, and it's like super detailed sometimes. There's so many pages of this stuff to read. What does this mean? What am I looking at? Why are we talking about ancient Egypt? I need to deliver packages. Stop talking about umbilical cords. This is weird. What am I doing here? Man, I just want to go back to delivering packages. So in Death Stranding, everyone collectively forgot what exposition is supposed to look like. Let's talk about something else. The soundtrack. The music in this game is so flippin' good, man. I mean the score, not the licensed music. The licensed music seemed to steal the show on the discussions I saw of this game's soundtrack, which is unfortunate because 𝗪𝗵𝗄𝐿 needs more appreciation for his amazing work. He's in my top 3 of gaming composers, and his work on Death Stranding is amazing. The soundtrack of this game is a unique experience, and I wish you heard it more in the gameplay. Death Stranding's score is so unique. The whole thing exudes this feeling of an abstractness and otherworldliness that I haven't heard recreated elsewhere. My favorite 3 standout tracks are Strands, Stars, and the Timefall. But even through the inherent strangeness of Death Stranding's soundtrack, 𝗪𝗵𝗄𝐿 manages to weave beauty through it, and it perfectly accompanies and represents the world of Death Stranding. Great work, Mr. 𝗪𝗄𝐿. All of these things are great, but you might be wondering, it seems like I have more mixed thoughts on Death Stranding than any other game on this list, so why is it your pick for Game of the Year? Great question, non-existent viewer. I mentioned earlier that I couldn't pick between all my top 3 games for which one was Game of the Year, so I had to rely on something that was technically outside the games to decide. So what was that factor that put Death Stranding on top? Well, here it is. Low Roar is one of my favorite bands I've discovered in years. and Death Stranding didn't actually introduce me to them, but I was still getting into them when I started the game. I mentioned earlier that Death Stranding has a lot of licensed music in it. Like 80% of that licensed music is Low Roar. Listening through Low Roar's discography throughout this year kind of punctuated the chapters of my 2024. Seriously, my brain processes parts of this year based on which Low Roar album I was listening to at that point. We're already running really long at this point in the video, so I don't want to drag this on because we still got a whole montage left. But man, Low Roar significantly altered my brain chemistry this year. I love the way Low Roar creates these ambient and isolatory soundscapes. Low Roar feels like abstract art given form and song, specifically on the album 𝐵𝑢𝑟𝑜, which is still my favorite album, but maybe that's due to the fact I listened to it first. I'm gonna be so sad when I have no more new Low Roar to listen to. So yeah, I picked my game of the year based on the licensed music included. Sue me. So that's why Death Stranding is my 2024 game of the year, and Low Roar is pretty much the reason why. To close this off, I would like to give you my theme of the year. I don't know if I'll keep doing this each year because I may or may not always have one, but this year I do. My theme of 2024 is you, or rather, people, and connecting with people. A lot of my favorite experiences in games were directly related to people. 2 out of 3 of my top 3 games are both directly focused on connecting players to each other and forging bonds instead of breaking them. That's what I want to see more of from video games. Instead of using games as a tool to prove ourselves and pit everyone against each other, I want to see more games about building each other up. Connection, bringing the good out of people. There's not enough of that in the world right now, and games have the unique ability to connect seemingly random people together from across the globe. So let's lean into that in 2025. And now for the whole reason I made this video.
Too troubling to recall. All the settings and the scenes that signaled suffering, impassioned pleas that ended in a whisper. And all the lessons learned, were they worth the ash from all the bridges burned?